Well, hey, everybody, friends, colleagues, clients, whoever is out there. This is Mike Hines and Bob Hines with Build Collective. We figured we'd do a little bit of a podcast and informational session on title companies.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Very.
Yeah, probably something that most people don't even think about until they get into the process on this kind of stuff. So we're going to jump right into it. Main reason behind this is to give our buyers and sellers an understanding of what a title company is, what you can prepare for,
And what's their role in the
role
whole
in the transaction
Yep.
itself. So this is going to be from a buyer's perspective.
Yep.
We'll do another one from a seller's perspective, but just to get started with buyers. So Bob, why don't you jump
Yeah.
in and tell people what a title company is?
Yeah. So a title company, in a nutshell, essentially they handle the title search. They handle all money transferred from buyer to seller to lenders. At the end of the day,
Sure.
When you're a buyer, you have to have a lender loan you the money
Sure.
to
Potentially, depending on if it's a
Yeah,
cash
it's
transaction
cash,
or whatnot.
sure.
But it's essentially just a third party
Correct.
that handles it's the middleman between the buyer and seller,
Correct.
right?
Handles all the funds. They also handle title search, so you want to make sure any property you buy doesn't have a lien, whether it's from taxes or mechanical or something like that.
So they handle that kind of stuff. They handle all the different details. So they a lot of times will get the deed prepared for
Yep.
you. They'll do a title search to make sure it's clean title.
Yep.
Depending on what you're looking to purchase, you want to make sure that's as clean as possible. And they'll do different types of title searches. So we'll get into those details of what they are. But essentially, it's just a facilitator of the transaction itself. So when you buy, just like buying a pair of underwear from the store, Bobby buys his at Walmart, but just like that.
My wife actually buys mine. Thank you.
Just like that, you have to have somebody that's going to do the transaction. It's probably a bad reference. You have to have somebody that handles the transaction for you. So what that is essentially, it's a title company is the third party that handles the transaction between buyer and seller, and they verify all the different details. So they're kind of there to police the deal and make sure the transaction's good. So
right.
when we talk about the title company, let's talk about the process real quick. So Bob, why don't you say what happens? Obviously,
Yeah, so you go under contract. Obviously, we're going to send the contract to your lender to let them understand the terms. We're also, at the same time, going to send it to the title company. The title company, day one, they're going to run the title search. They want to make sure the title of the property is free and clear of everything.
And let's back up for just a second. So when we send over the details, the lender typically decides who the title company is, or you can write that into the contract.
The
but the
buyer
lender really
can,
dictates that oftentimes.
Can request. Now, sometimes the end lender will prefer a certain title company, which will, steer
Which can
you in-
affect closing
Yep.
costs, all kinds of stuff. So
Yep.
that's one thing to keep in mind. So whenever you write that in on the contract. So I know I'm
Yep.
backing up for a second, but
Yep.
keep going on that.
Yeah. So essentially, their first step on any is just to run the title search. At the same time, they're going to collect all data as far as payoffs for the seller. Most of the time, there is a mortgage on it. They're going to request all information or their closing costs. Essentially, the title company creates what's called a settlement statement or an ALTA statement, which has all those fees, whether it's county taxes. Obviously, the seller is going to pay up to the specific day of closing. So when the buyer takes possession and title, there's no back taxes owed. So they create that settlement statement of all the figures.
And the title company essentially just prepares all of the figures. So on those, you're going to see 20 or 30 different line
Yep.
items. There's plenty more that could be in there.
Yep.
But they take 30 days, 45 days. Sometimes it's a little bit quicker than that to actually prepare that document. So
Yep.
there's a lot of work that goes into it. HOA,
Yep.
prorated taxes like you were talking about. There's fees that the title companies
Deed
charge,
prep. Yep.
deed prep, all that kind of stuff. And then commissions, anything that you can think of that has to do with the transaction. Essentially, it's just a big spreadsheet
Yep.
that dictates what exactly the buyer is going to bring to the table and what the seller is going to take from the transaction. And a lot of that is actually dictated from the lender itself. The lender will dictate what the fees are. So that's kind of the first step is you get the contract in the hands of the title company. They start preparing with a title search. They do what they call an abstract. They have somebody out there at the courthouse that runs that. They could go anywhere from 40 years back, or they go for homeowners. Depending on who you go with, different title companies do different things. It's a good question to ask on that front. And then what do they do from there? Once they get the title search back, they tell you if it's free and clear, right?
Yep. And if there's not, obviously there's a lien on the property. You've got to get it released and worked out
And cleared.
Yeah. So obviously you're not going to, if you as a buyer, you're not going to buy a piece of property or a home that has a clouded title. You want that all to be completely resolved way ahead of time. So if there are any issues like that, the title company will contact the buying, selling agents, ultimately the buyer and seller, to make sure it gets handled, so you have free and clear title.
Free and clear title. So that's number one of the most important. And if there are issues on title, which happen from time to time, I mean, sometimes there's a name that pops up that is attached to one of the titles, or maybe to one of the buyers or sellers, and they have to make sure that name isn't associated with the liens.
I mean, we've had a lot where, a lot of homes where somebody's refinanced, and that company, that mortgage company, didn't necessarily file everything correctly. And so the title company has to work with the seller and ultimately that lender to make sure whatever documents weren't done correctly get handled, so then there's no sort of issues or clouded title. So,
and one good thing is if you're only hearing from your title company occasionally, to reach out to you, because your agent will facilitate this with the title company. But if you're only hearing when they need something from you, that's a good thing. If you're hearing about problems, then that means there could be delay, there could be some issues and that sort of thing. But it's really important. And in the background of this will be inspections will be handled. Sometimes people like to handle the inspections prior to starting the title company. We like to get the process started as quickly as possible, just so there are no issues and delays there. But once you get through all of these items, what you're typically waiting on before they can send out the ALTA statement or the settlement statement, formerly known as the HUD, is the bank. The bank gives what they call clear to close and lending instructions. So they send a big old packet to the title company. And this is where we should say thank you to all the title companies out there, because they have a hard job of basically going through all the different details on a transaction to make sure there's no issues on
At
that.
the end of the day, the title company is the one, when you go to buy a house, all those documents that are printed ready for you, they've done that. They've collected all the data from seller, buyer, agents, lenders, to make sure everything is ready for you to sign and close on that house.
And in good shape. Exactly.
I mean, it could be, if it's a cash deal, obviously it's not as much paperwork, but it's still 50 to 100 pages. Some closings, it's 200 pages worth of documents that need to be prepared and signed. So.
And we'll do another one day on the closing day itself, because that's typically an hour, but it can go back and forth. So we'll get into all that kind of details on another podcast. But so then once you get all the documents ready, they'll send out a settlement statement for you to review. You'll take a look at it, audit it best you can, understand it. On that settlement statement, there's a couple things that we should really discuss that are big ticket items that sometimes aren't discussed until you get to the closing, but one of which is closing protection coverage and the other is title insurance. So what closing protection coverage is essentially insurance on the title company itself. It could be a $55 fee or it could be a $20 fee depending on if you're a buyer or a seller, and it protects your funds from the title company. Back in the day, there was the big Urban Deck issue that was going on way back when. So that's why they came up with this this closing protection coverage, which basically is just insurance from the title company. So it protects your
insurance
interest
from the buyer or seller against the title company, saying, hey, I'm going to wire you as the buyer X amount of dollars to take and it goes towards my down payment or whatever it is. I want to make sure that money is at the end of the day given to the seller or wherever it's supposed to go. So it protects you on that.
Exactly. A lot of times, we should be honest, is a lot of people don't get that policy. We definitely don't recommend not to get it. It's one of those things that's an added insurance, like any insurance. And then that goes into title insurance, which is probably the most common insurance people get, which protects you against any title issues and protects your equity in your title. So basically what title insurance is it indemnifies you as the owner from actually the title itself. So if something were to pop up, something was a clerical error filed way back after, and it's going to cost you money, and it may be attorney fees or title issues, this title insurance, which is mandated by the state and provided by these title companies, is there to protect you against any title issues. We get it. I know when I buy properties, I get it. I'm not saying that I recommend it. It's just, it gives me peace of mind of where I can sleep at night. And a lot of our clients choose not to. It's something that you can make a judgment call based on the title you have on that front. So with that said, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the title company itself. But some advice that we want to give you, just a few practical tips, are the biggest one is probably be prepared when the title company reaches out to you. To start compiling your mortgage information best you can. Start just getting all your documents together just so you're in good shape, because I think that really is important and makes your life a heck of a lot easier. The other one is get started early. Right? I mean, that's part of what we do. And then
be proactive on it.
Be proactive.
You want to, in the first week of putting a property under contract, you want to know, is there a problem with the title? And if so, let's get it cleared up and fixed. Not, hey, let's wait 3 weeks. And if it's a short closing, 30, 45 days,
then have it be delayed because of that.
Now you're going to be delayed at least a few weeks to a month because you weren't proactive and didn't get the title company
Exactly.
involved way ahead of time.
It's
So.
a really important thing.
Yep.
And then use a reputable title company.
Yeah.
Keep in
There's
mind,
a
you could be
ton of
wiring a
title
lot of money
companies
to them. Yes,
Yeah.
you have to be really careful.
Yep.
Make sure you look at, if it's somebody that your agent uses or your bank uses quite often, then they're probably a pretty good title company.
Yep.
But you also want to look at it. That's what the beauty of Google reviews and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you trust them,
Yep.
and make sure the communication is good with them.
Yep.
If you see any bad issues
Yeah.
or anything that kind of you raise an eyebrow about, then go a different way. And then
Yeah.
the most important
Definitely.
one, probably of
Yeah.
all things, is I'll let Bob
Is
take this
check
one.
the wiring. I mean, wire fraud is rampant. It's
So prevalent.
It's such a big problem where we have people trying to change a letter or a number in somebody's email, acting like they're the agent or the title company or the lender, to send you fake wiring instructions. So instead of you sending that money to the title company, ultimately to handle it correctly, it's going and immediately gets wired to somebody else. So we always say the title company is going to send you wiring instructions. Pick up the phone, call them, talk to the person who you've been talking to for the past few weeks, month.
Yes.
And verify.
Verify all those numbers.
all-
Talk through them
exactly.
twice. Make sure you're good. We will, as agents, we will never, ever, ever, ever send you title any wiring instructions.
No.
So do not. If you see an email come from us, it is not wiring instructions.
Yep.
Unfortunately, people can hack into our systems in
Yep.
any system. So you have to be really careful. Now they're going to some more of these encrypted solutions for this. But if there's one thing you can take from this is be careful of wire fraud. It's why we have you sign a document at the time of contract and even sometimes the time of listing to make sure you know that.
Yep.
So when it comes down to it, title company plays a huge role in this. They are our friends throughout the process. You need them on your side. We use some great title companies. We used to be neighbors with one, and we used them for all the stuff. And we'll
tried to.
Yeah, they're fantastic people. We'll give a shout out to First Title and our friends over there, Dan Owner, Luis Sanchez, all of our group over that way.
Jackie Adams.
Jackie, of course, Jackie. I almost forgot one of the most important ones.
yeah,
She's the one that does all the work. But we use Lawyers Title. There's plenty of great title companies out there. Prodigy, who just left
had
just a couple
closing
minutes
with them.
ago.
Yep.
Prominent Title. There's some great ones here in Cincinnati. We should say we're in Ohio, so all of this can be different from state to state. We are also not attorneys, so anything that we are telling you right now, verify. But at the same time, we do quite a few closings every year. We kind of know what we're talking about when it comes down to this. But at the same time, we're giving you the practical knowledge, not the legal interpretation of any of this stuff. So we just say if you have any questions, ask a lawyer, ask the title company itself directly, ask your bank, or ask us, of course. But we just want to give that little disclosure as far as that goes. So thanks for spending a couple minutes with us. We appreciate it, and hopefully this was helpful. Take care, guys.
Thanks.